The faint, persistent hum of servers was the lullaby Elias Thorne knew best. It was well past midnight, the city outside his downtown office a blurred tapestry of neon and shadow, but within the glass walls of Ether Innovations, time ceased to exist. Multiple monitors cast an ethereal glow on his face, reflecting lines of complex code that scrolled endlessly, each character a testament to his unwavering dedication. Empty coffee cups, monuments to countless sleepless nights, formed a precarious tower beside his keyboard, their lingering aroma a bitter counterpoint to the quiet ambition that fueled him. He wore the same faded hoodie he'd worn for the past 3 days, its fabric soft from endless washes, a uniform of relentless pursuit. Elias wasn't building just another tech startup. He was forging a philosophy. Ether Innovations, his life's singular focus, was founded on the bedrock of sustainable, open-source technology. He envisioned a world where innovation wasn't locked behind paywalls or controlled by corporate behemoths, but was accessible, collaborative, and beneficial to all. His current obsession was a decentralized energy grid system, a project so ambitious it made seasoned venture capitalists scoff. Yet, for Elias, it wasn't just about the code. It was about rectifying an imbalance, righting a wrong that transcended mere business. He pored over schematics, his brow furrowed in concentration, the quiet intensity of his focus illuminating the stark contrast between his humble, honest work and the vast, shadowy corporate world he was up against. His commitment wasn't born of greed, but of a deep-seated conviction that had been brewing within him for decades, a silent, simmering force that most people mistook for mere entrepreneurial drive. His personal life, what little there was of it, was Spartan. A small apartment, filled with salvaged furniture and stacks of technical manuals, served mostly as a place to sleep. Social gatherings were rare, personal connections sparse. Every ounce of his waking energy, every stray thought, was channeled into ether. He lived and breathed his vision, a solitary figure against a looming horizon. The world outside his small office often felt like a distant, indistinct hum, irrelevant compared to the intricate architectures he built within the digital realm. His single-mindedness often led others to misinterpret his quiet intensity, mistaking it for social awkwardness rather than a profound, all-consuming purpose. One blustery Tuesday, as a major deadline loomed for Ether's prototype, a critical component supplier unexpectedly hiked their prices, citing unforeseen material costs. The increase would cripple Ether's already strained budget, potentially delaying the launch by months. Elias, reviewing the new quote, felt a familiar knot tighten in his stomach. He knew, instinctively, that the price hike was a subtle maneuver, not a genuine market fluctuation. He could have found a cheaper, less ethical alternative, a quick fix that would satisfy investors and keep the project on schedule. But the thought sickened him. He believed in transparency, in accountability, in a future built on integrity, not on compromises. Instead of capitulating, Elias spent the next 48 hours relentlessly researching alternative, ethically sourced materials and renegotiating contracts, sacrificing sleep and personal comfort. He personally called small-scale producers, explaining Ether's mission, winning them over with his quiet sincerity. He even flew, on a red-eye, to a remote facility in the Midwest to inspect a new type of recyclable alloy, ensuring its environmental footprint aligned with Ether's core values. He returned exhausted, but with a renewed contract that not only honored his ethical commitments, but also secured a more stable long-term supply chain. This act, unseen by most, was his personal litmus test, a silent vow that his company would never compromise its soul for mere speed or profit. He knew that true innovation wasn't just about what you built, but how you built it, and the principles you upheld along the way. This unwavering commitment to ethical sourcing, even in the face of financial pressure, solidified the quiet, unyielding integrity that defined him. He would rather fail with honor than succeed through compromise. On the corner of Elias's perpetually cluttered desk, nestled amongst the circuit boards and schematic printouts, sat a small, tarnished silver frame. Inside was a faded, sepia-toned photograph. It showed 2 small children, no older than 5 or 6, their arms wrapped around each other, grinning widely at the camera. A boy with bright, curious eyes, and a girl with a mischievous spark. The corner where the girl's face should have been was creased and torn, almost as if deliberately ripped, leaving her features obscured, a ghostly blur. Elias would often trace the outline of the missing face with his thumb during moments of quiet contemplation, a fleeting expression of deep sadness passing over his features. The photograph was a relic, a silent testament to a past he rarely spoke of, a past that held the key to the unspoken drive behind Ether Innovations. It hinted at a profound loss, a fractured family, and a long-simmering desire for a justice that extended far beyond the realm of technology. He never elaborated on who the children were or why the photo was damaged, leaving it as a subtle, unsettling puzzle for anyone who might notice it amidst his technical chaos. This tiny personal detail was a seed of mystery, a silent prelude to the storm that was gathering on the horizon. The precarious balance Elias Thorne had meticulously built around Ether Innovations began to tilt, slowly at first, then with increasing speed, until it threatened to topple everything he had fought for. The quiet hum of his servers, once a soothing symphony, now seemed to throb with an ominous undercurrent. The first tremor came subtly, a whisper carried on the digital winds of the tech world. Rumors. Ether Innovations? Heard their code is riddled with backdoors. That Elias Thorne, he's brilliant, but a bit unorthodox. Skirts the edges of patent law, from what I hear. These weren't just the usual industry whispers. They were too specific, too coordinated, laced with a venom that felt deeply personal. Elias felt it in the way investors suddenly became evasive, in the wary glances from potential partners. He knew the source without having to confirm it. Apex Solutions, the industry titan, loomed large, a shadow cast over the nascent light of Ether. Apex Solutions, under the iron fist of its CEO, Alexander Sterling, was a behemoth built on aggressive acquisitions, proprietary technology, and a ruthless competitive streak. Alexander was known for his sharp intellect and even sharper elbows, a man who saw innovation as a zero-sum game. Elias had crossed paths with Apex before, in various industry forums, always maintaining a polite but firm distance. He held a deep-seated distrust for their predatory practices, a feeling that resonated with the unspoken injustices of his own past. The whispers quickly escalated into a full-blown roar. Apex launched a targeted, malicious smear campaign, not just against Ether Innovations technology, but directly at Elias himself. The accusations hit with the precision of a surgical strike, designed to inflict maximum damage. Articles appeared on obscure tech blogs, then on more reputable news sites, accusing Elias of plagiarism, claiming Ether's core algorithms were stolen from a defunct research lab. There were insinuations of unethical data harvesting, painting Elias as a wolf in sheep's clothing, a benevolent innovator with a hidden agenda. Then came the most damaging blow, an anonymous tip to a financial watchdog alleging outright fraud in Ether's initial seed funding. Each accusation was a direct hit to Elias's core values, to the integrity he had so painstakingly built. He felt a visceral shock, a cold wave of indignation washing over him. It wasn't just a business attack, it was a deeply personal assault on his character, on the very foundation of his being. He had poured his soul into Ether, built it on principles of honesty and transparency. To be accused of the very things he despised felt like a profound betrayal, a desecration of his life's work. His small team at Ether Innovations, initially loyal, began to waver under the relentless assault. Whispers of doubt spread among them. Trust, a fragile thing in the cutthroat startup world, began to erode. Elias saw it in their averted gazes, the hesitant questions, the nervous energy that now permeated their once harmonious office. The very existence of his startup, his vision for accessible innovation, hung by a thread. This wasn't merely a threat to his company's survival. It was an attempt to dismantle his identity, to strip him of his good name. Elias's initial reaction was a turmoil of conflicting emotions. A searing, righteous anger flared within him, a primal urge to retaliate with equal force, to expose Apex's own dark dealings. He knew secrets about Alexander Sterling, fragments of a forgotten history that pricked at the edges of his memory, details that could shatter Apex's polished facade. But then, a deeper, more ingrained instinct pulled him back, the ingrained ethical stance that defined Ether. He refused to stoop to their level, to fight fire with fire if it meant sacrificing his principles. The struggle was agonizing, a battle between self-preservation and moral integrity. Yet this unprovoked, brutal attack ignited something long dormant within Elias. It wasn't just the anger of an entrepreneur defending his business. It was the reawakening of a deeper, long-suppressed sense of injustice. The accusations, so brazen and baseless, resonated with an old, unspoken pain, a feeling of being wronged that stretched back decades. He thought of the faded photograph on his desk, the torn corner. This wasn't just about ether anymore. This was about something far more fundamental, a deep-seated resolve to fight for what was right, to correct a profound imbalance, a silent echoing of a past grievance that now demanded to be addressed. The attack on his reputation felt like a direct assault on the very memory he carried, sparking a fierce resolve he hadn't fully acknowledged in years. The catalyst reached its point of no return when Apex Solutions escalated their attacks with chilling precision. A formal public lawsuit, based on what Elias knew were fabricated emails and manipulated data, was filed against Ether Innovations, seeking damages that would effectively bankrupt the startup. Simultaneously, a wave of strategic financial maneuvers by Apex led to key early investors, crucial to Ether's upcoming funding round, suddenly pulling out, citing unforeseen market instability and concerns about leadership integrity. One particularly devastating blow came from Horizon Capital, a venture fund known for its ethical investments, whose sudden withdrawal sent a clear message of lost confidence. The news hit Elias like a physical blow. He stared at the email from Horizon, the polite but firm language confirming their decision to divest. This was beyond mere defense. He couldn't simply ignore these accusations, couldn't just ride out the storm. Apex wasn't interested in competition. They were interested in annihilation. This wasn't just about Ether's survival. It was about Elias's own truth, his very identity. He looked around his cluttered office, at the weary faces of his remaining team. He saw their fear, their flagging hope. He knew that if he didn't fight back, truly fight back, everything would be lost. Not just the company, but the vision, the legacy, the quiet pursuit of justice that had driven him for so long. The realization was stark and absolute. He had to actively expose the truth, not just to clear Ether's name, but to confront the deep-seated injustice that he now understood was inextricably linked to his own past. There was no retreating, no hiding in the quiet hum of his servers. The battle had been brought to his doorstep, and Elias Thorne, the quiet founder, was now forced to step onto a much larger stage, armed with nothing but his integrity and a burgeoning, terrifying understanding of the true enemy. The digital battleground was set, the lines drawn in the silicon dust. Elias, though outwardly calm, felt a churning storm within. The legal notices from Apex Solutions piled up on his desk, each one a stark reminder of the corporate behemoth he faced. Alexander Sterling's public pronouncements, dripping with veiled contempt and false sincerity, gnawed at Elias. He knew, with a certainty that transcended logic, that Alexander's attacks weren't just about market dominance. There was a deeper, more personal undercurrent. It was a resonance, a discordant chord plucked from the forgotten melodies of his own past. A small industry conference, Innovate Forward, presented the first direct, unavoidable confrontation. It was a relatively low-key event, designed for networking and showcasing nascent technologies, precisely the kind of venue Elias favored for Ether Innovations. Apex Solutions, however, had unexpectedly decided to send a high-ranking representative, Marcus Thorne, their head of corporate communications, a man known for his razor-sharp wit and brutal effectiveness in public discourse. Alexander Sterling himself was not present, a strategic absence that allowed his proxy to deliver Apex's narrative without direct challenge. Elias stood beside Ether's modest booth, the glow of their prototype illuminating his determined face. He was explaining the intricacies of their decentralized energy grid to a small cluster of curious attendees when Marcus Thorne, flanked by two impeccably dressed Apex junior executives, approached. Marcus's smile was a predatory flash of white teeth, his eyes cold and calculating. "Mr. Thorne," Marcus began, his voice smooth, dripping with feigned cordiality. "Marcus Thorne, Apex Solutions. We've been observing Ether Innovations with great interest." The emphasis on observing hung in the air, a thinly veiled threat. He cast a dismissive glance at Ether's prototype, a complex array of interconnected modules. Rather quaint, isn't it? All this talk of open source and sustainability. In the real world, Mr. Thorne, innovation is about proprietary solutions, about control, about delivering actual results, not just lofty ideals. Elias met his gaze, his own eyes unwavering. And what exactly do you define as actual results, Mr. Thorne? Profit margins built on exclusion? Or solutions that genuinely empower people? He knew Marcus was baiting him, trying to draw him into a superficial debate about business models. But Elias had no intention of playing that game. He aimed for a deeper strike, a probe into the very core of Apex's vulnerability, a vulnerability he intuitively felt was linked to Alexander Sterling himself. Empowerment? Charming, Marcus scoffed, his smile widening into a sneer. We talk about market share, strategic acquisitions, global dominance, things Ether Innovations, with its grassroots approach, can only dream of. Frankly, your entire business model, if one can even call it that, strikes me as incredibly naive. Almost as if it's built on, well, a fantasy. He leaned in, his voice dropping slightly. Or perhaps, Mr. Thorne, it's built on something less savory. We've heard whispers, you see, about unconventional beginnings. The implication of plagiarism and unethical conduct hung heavy in the air. This was the opening Elias sought. He didn't rise to the bait of defending Ether's business model. Instead, he chose to subtly unveil the deeper knowledge he possessed, the knowledge that hinted at a past connected to Alexander. He looked directly into Marcus's eyes, his voice calm, measured, yet imbued with an almost chilling certainty. Mr. Thorne, Elias countered, his tone even, you speak of beginnings. Apex Solutions, if my memory serves, began with a rather unorthodox acquisition itself, didn't it? A smaller company, years ago, focused on predictive analytics, suddenly dissolved, its innovative core technology absorbed. Its founders, well, they simply vanished from the industry. A rather efficient, if brutal method of market share acquisition, wouldn't you say? Marcus Thorne's slick facade wavered, a flicker of genuine surprise crossing his features. He blinked, momentarily thrown off balance. The acquisition Elias spoke of was obscure, a decade-old footnote in Apex's rapid rise, rarely discussed even within the company's inner circles. It had been carefully buried, its details opaque to public scrutiny. How could this small-time founder know about it, let alone speak of it with such specific, casual authority? Marcus's mind raced, searching for an explanation, dismissing it as a lucky guess, a desperate attempt to deflect. I'm not familiar with the specifics of every minor acquisition in Apex's history, Mr. Thorne. Marcus recovered, his voice slightly more strained, his smile tighter. Our focus is always forward-looking, on innovation, not on dusty archives. He attempted a dismissive wave of his hand, but his eyes darted to the side, betraying his unease. But Elias wasn't finished. He stepped closer, lowering his voice conspiratorially, as if sharing a secret. Dusty archives indeed. But some histories, Mr. Thorne, have a way of lingering, especially those with unresolved complexities. The kind that haunt a CEO, perhaps, even one as outwardly composed as Alexander Sterling. He paused, letting the implication hang in the air, a silent, pointed accusation. Some things once broken cast a very long shadow. Marcus's composure fractured further. He knew, intimately, of Alexander's volatile temper, his deep-seated insecurities, and the carefully guarded secrets of his past. Elias's words, so seemingly innocuous, struck a nerve. They resonated with the faint, unsettling whispers Marcus had occasionally caught around the Apex executive suites, whispers of a difficult childhood, or a tragic family incident that Alexander rarely, if ever, discussed. He dismissed it, once more, as a bizarre coincidence, a desperate tactic from a cornered opponent. But a seed of unease had been planted. Standing nearby, observing the entire exchange with a keen, analytical gaze, was Sarah Jenkins, Elias's brilliant lead engineer and his closest confidant. Sarah, a woman of quiet observation and sharp intuition, had noticed Elias's shift in demeanor the moment Apex's attacks began. She saw the familiar flicker of determination in his eyes, but also a deeper, almost haunted intensity. She had heard his words about the unorthodox acquisition and the unresolved complexities. Her brow furrowed slightly. Elias rarely spoke with such veiled, almost personal animosity about competitors. This wasn't just business strategy. This was something more profound. Sarah felt a subtle shiver of realization. Elias wasn't just fighting for his company. He was fighting for something deeply personal, something she couldn't yet fully grasp. She was the helper character, sensing the hidden layers of the protagonist, silently intrigued by the mystery Elias carried. Marcus Thorne, regaining his arrogant swagger, decided to seize the offensive. He laughed, a harsh, dismissive sound that drew the attention of several onlookers. "Look, Mr. Thorne," he declared, his voice rising, designed to attract a wider audience. "We're not here for vague philosophical musings or historical conspiracy theories. Apex Solutions deals in facts, in demonstrable progress. And the fact is, Ether Innovations is a liability. Your technology is unproven, your financial backing is questionable, and your leadership, frankly, seems more interested in obscure personal grievances than in genuine innovation." He spun on his heel, turning to the gathering crowd. "Let me be clear. Apex Solutions will ensure that any company engaging in such dubious practices will not survive in this market. Consider this a public warning, Mr. Thorne. Apex tolerates no competition built on sand." His words were a clear act of malice, a public declaration of war, designed to humiliate Elias and drive a wedge between Ether and any potential allies. Marcus was operating under Alexander Sterling's explicit directive: discredit and destroy. He believed he was simply executing a ruthless business strategy. But in Alexander's mind, there was a deeper, unacknowledged fear. Elias's words, those subtle probes into Apex's past, had stirred a latent anxiety within Alexander, a half-forgotten ghost that he desperately needed to keep buried. This escalation solidified Alexander as a formidable antagonist, driven not just by corporate ambition, but by a desperate need to suppress a buried truth he barely remembered, a truth Elias's very existence seemed to threaten. The stage was set, the lines of conflict drawn, and Elias's deeper motivation, though still veiled, now cast a long, unsettling shadow over the brewing corporate war. The gauntlet had been thrown. Marcus Thorne's public declaration at Innovate Forward resonated through the tech community, an unmistakable pronouncement of war from Apex Solutions. Elias felt the reverberations keenly. Investor meetings were canceled, potential partnerships evaporated, and the once steady stream of talent applying to Ether Innovations slowed to a trickle. The lawsuit, based on manufactured evidence, moved forward with ruthless efficiency, threatening to drain Ether's meager resources dry. Alexander Sterling, though absent from the direct confrontations, orchestrated the campaign with chilling precision from behind the scenes, his moves calculated to suffocate Ether before it could truly breathe. The arena for the ultimate test was to be the prestigious Global Tech Summit, held annually in Silicon Valley. It was the industry's grandest stage, where titans unveiled groundbreaking innovations and promising startups sought their breakthroughs. This year, both Apex Solutions and Ether Innovations were slated to present. Apex, predictably, secured a prime keynote slot. Alexander Sterling himself set to unveil their latest disruptive technology. Ether, by contrast, was relegated to a smaller afternoon breakout session, a clear attempt by Apex to diminish their presence and relegate Elias to obscurity. Alexander had chosen this stage not just to crush Ether, but to publicly humiliate Elias, to definitively prove Apex's dominance and Elias's insignificance. The irony was palpable. The man orchestrating this public spectacle remained blissfully unaware of the true deep-seated personal stakes involved. Elias knew this was his only chance. He couldn't simply defend against Apex's lies. He had to expose them, and in doing so, reveal the deeper truth that bound him to Alexander. The pressure was immense. His small team, though loyal, was stretched thin, exhausted by the relentless attacks. Sarah Jenkins, his lead engineer, worked tirelessly by his side, her eyes often reflecting the same weary determination as his own. She was his rock, his helper character, providing not just technical expertise but also unwavering moral support. Yet, the core confrontation, the true battle for justice, was Elias's alone to fight. The days leading up to the summit were a blur of frantic preparation. Elias and Sarah pored over Apex's public data, hunting for inconsistencies, for any crack in their polished facade. They knew Apex's alleged breakthrough product, Titan OS, was largely vaporware, built on inflated claims and questionable metrics. Elias's gut instinct, fueled by that deep, nagging memory, told him there was more to it, a hidden vulnerability tied directly to Alexander. He worked on a counter-presentation, meticulously crafting not just a defense of Ether, but a surgical strike against Apex, designed to dismantle their lies and expose their unethical core. The night before the summit, Elias was in his hotel room, the air thick with the scent of stale coffee and printer ink. He was scrutinizing a complex legal document related to Apex's past acquisitions, searching for something, anything, that felt out of place. He paused, his finger tracing a faint, almost invisible watermark on one of the old contracts, a tiny, stylized bird with a broken wing. He'd seen it before, somewhere, long ago. A fragment of memory, elusive and painful, teased at the edges of his consciousness. Suddenly, a knock at the door. It was Sarah. Her face was pale, her expression grim. "Elias, we have a problem," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "Just got word from our anonymous contact inside Apex. They've pushed up their keynote. It's now first thing tomorrow morning. And they're planning a live demo of Titan OS that they claim will irrefutably expose Ether's plagiarized code. They're going for a knockout blow, Elias. First thing, you have less than 12 hours to prepare a response." A wave of cold dread washed over Elias. 12 hours. It was a brutal, impossible timeline. This was Alexander's move, a preemptive strike designed to leave Ether no time to react, to guarantee their public annihilation. The time pressure was now acutely, terrifyingly real. "And it gets worse," Sarah continued, her voice trembling slightly. "Our contact also leaked a memo. Apex has infiltrated some of the summit's core network infrastructure. They're planning to remotely trigger a fake security alert during your session tomorrow afternoon to disrupt your presentation and further discredit Ether." Elias clenched his jaw. Sabotage. This wasn't just a smear campaign. It was outright corporate espionage, a desperate act from a company clearly running scared. He looked at the old photograph on his desk, the one with the torn corner. The memory of the little girl, her face obscured, burned in his mind. This was Alexander Sterling's doing, the casual cruelty, the relentless drive to dominate, the willingness to destroy everything in his path. It all felt agonizingly familiar. "They're not just trying to win, Sarah," Elias murmured, his voice tight. "They're trying to erase us, to erase me." His eyes fixed on the photograph, a flicker of raw, unresolved grief mixing with steely resolve. This wasn't merely a business rivalry. It was a personal vendetta, rooted in a past only he truly remembered. He knew with absolute certainty that the only way to fight Alexander was to expose the truth, not just about Apex, but about Alexander himself. Sarah, sensing the shift in Elias, the deeper well of resolve he was drawing from, placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. "What do we do, Elias? We don't have enough time to counter their demo, and we can't let them sabotage our session." Elias closed his eyes for a brief moment, picturing the intricate network architectures he had designed, the vulnerabilities he had exploited in various systems over the years, not for profit, but for knowledge. He opened them, a new light gleaming in their depths. "We change the game, Sarah. We don't just respond, we expose, and we don't wait for our session." He began sketching furiously on a whiteboard, connecting disparate data points, drawing complex network diagrams, his mind racing. He spoke in rapid fire, outlining a daring, almost reckless plan. He would interrupt Alexander's keynote. He would use Apex's own infrastructure against them, turning their attempt at sabotage into a public unveiling of their lies. This was a direct, head-on confrontation, not just of technologies, but of moralities, on the biggest stage possible. But how? Sarah asked, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and exhilaration. Their security is impenetrable. Elias pointed to a complex node on his diagram, a hidden backdoor he had discovered weeks ago, a flaw in Apex's early network architecture that had remained unpatched, a ghost in the machine. It was a blind spot, a weakness that only someone with an intimate, almost intuitive knowledge of Apex's foundational systems would ever find. It had felt strangely familiar even then. "Not entirely," he said, a grim smile playing on his lips. "Not for someone who knows how their system truly began. And as for their irrefutable exposure of Ether's code, we'll use their own projection to broadcast the truth about them." The night was long and arduous. Elias worked with a singular, desperate focus, fueled by sheer will and years of suppressed pain. He was preparing not just a presentation, but a public reckoning. He meticulously wove together data points, legal documents, and subtle personal details that only he could interpret. This was his moment of solitude, the burden of proof resting entirely on his shoulders. He was alone in this ultimate test, facing Alexander Sterling's empire, armed only with truth and the haunting echoes of a shared, fractured past. The stage was set for a dramatic revelation, one that would redefine not just the tech industry, but the lives of two long-lost siblings. The vast auditorium of the Global Tech Summit hummed with anticipation, a colossal, curved screen dominating the stage, currently displaying Apex Solutions' sleek corporate logo. Thousands of industry leaders, investors, and media personnel filled the seats, a sea of expectant faces. Backstage, the air was thick with the nervous energy of technicians and the quiet tension of Alexander Sterling's team. Alexander himself, impeccably dressed, exuded an aura of confident power, a man on the cusp of an undisputed triumph. He paced briefly, a self-satisfied smirk playing on his lips, before stepping into the blinding spotlight. "Good morning, innovators," Alexander's voice boomed, perfectly modulated, filling the cavernous space. "Today, Apex Solutions unveils not just a product, but a paradigm shift. Titan OS isn't merely an operating system, it's the future of unified, secure technology. And to those who peddle open-source illusions and ethical pipe dreams," his gaze seemed to sweep over the audience, though it felt directed specifically at Elias's remote location. "Let this demonstration serve as a definitive answer to their unfounded accusations of plagiarism." On the gigantic screen, a slick, animated sequence began, showcasing Titan OS's supposed capabilities. Alexander began to explain its intricate security protocols, its revolutionary processing power, and its seamless integration across diverse platforms. He moved with practiced ease, a master orator commanding his stage. The audience was captivated. Meanwhile, in a dimly lit control booth hidden high above the stage, Elias worked with a desperate, surgical precision. Sarah stood beside him, her eyes glued to a small console, ready to execute his commands. Elias's fingers danced across a modified interface, a direct illicit link into the summit's core network, which Apex had subtly compromised for their own nefarious purposes. He was riding their vulnerability, exploiting the hidden backdoor he'd discovered, the ghost in Apex's older systems. This was his bated breath moment, where everything hung precariously in the balance. As Alexander reached the crescendo of his presentation, demonstrating Titan OS's ironclad encryption by decrypting a complex data stream in milliseconds, Elias pressed a series of carefully timed commands. The main screen behind Alexander flickered. The Apex logo wavered, then distorted, replaced by a momentary flash of static. A collective gasp rippled through the audience. Alexander paused, a flicker of irritation crossing his face, his perfect composure briefly disturbed. "A minor technical hiccup," Alexander smoothly recovered, forcing a laugh. The sheer processing power of Titan OS occasionally taxes even the most robust display systems. But it wasn't a hiccup, it was Elias. On the main screen, the sleek Titan OS interface dissolved, replaced by a stark, unformatted block of text. It scrolled rapidly, too fast for most to read initially, but its raw, unpolished appearance was a jarring contrast to Apex's polished presentation. Alexander stared, his eyes widening in disbelief. It was code, raw and unadulterated, not Ether's code, as he'd expected. It was Apex's own foundational code, but filled with glaring, critical vulnerabilities and clear instances of intellectual property theft, meticulously documented with timestamps and source attribution. A murmur began in the audience, growing quickly into a roar. Gasps of shock echoed through the hall. On a smaller screen in the corner of the stage, what was supposed to be a live feed of Apex's internal servers, showing Titan OS's real-time performance, now displayed something else entirely. A hidden folder labeled Project Chimera, filled with subfolders containing fabricated evidence, manipulated data, and detailed plans for smear campaigns against rival startups, specifically mentioning Ether Innovations by name. The insidious truth of Apex's corporate espionage was laid bare for all to see. Alexander's face went from disbelief to a ghastly pallor. He tried to speak, but no words came out. His mouth opened and closed uselessly, his eyes darting frantically between the incriminating code and the rapidly scrolling memo. His entire charade was unraveling, spectacularly, publicly. This was not a minor technical hiccup. This was a complete, unmitigated exposure. "This is impossible!" Alexander finally managed to choke out, his voice hoarse, a desperate, pathetic plea. "This is a hack! A malicious attack! These are lies!" But Elias wasn't done. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for the final, devastating blow. He knew this would shatter Alexander, but justice demanded it. He initiated the last sequence. Suddenly, the screen changed again. The incriminating Apex data and the Project Chimera folder vanished, replaced by a single familiar image. It was the faded, sepia-toned photograph from Elias's desk. The two small children, arms wrapped around each other, grinning. But this time, the torn corner was magically repaired, a digital reconstruction of the missing piece revealing the full face of the little girl, her features strikingly similar to Elias's own, a mirror to his younger self. Then, a synthesized voice, calm and clear, filled the auditorium, projected through Apex's own compromised sound system. It was Elias's voice, carefully pre-recorded. "Alexander," the voice began, soft yet cutting. "You speak of beginnings. Do you remember this one?" The image of the children slowly zoomed in on the faces, then faded into a second image, a grainy scan of an old official document. It was a birth certificate, the name at the top, Alexander Sterling. Below it, a second name, Elias Sterling. And further down, the names of their parents, the connection, undeniable, chillingly clear. Alexander stared at the screen, his entire body trembling. Elias Sterling. The name echoed through the deepest, most carefully locked chambers of his memory. Elias, his brother, the little boy he thought had died in the fire, the one he had tried so desperately to forget, to bury beneath layers of ambition and corporate ruthlessness. He had spent a lifetime erasing that painful past, constructing a new identity, a new reality. And now, his long-lost brother, the plagiarist, the unethical founder, stood before him, not just exposing his corporate malfeasance, but tearing open the deepest wound of his past. The audience, initially confused, then murmuring with shock at the corporate espionage, now fell into a stunned silence. They watched Alexander's face crumble, saw the raw, agonizing recognition dawn in his eyes. The subtle shifts, the way his jaw slackened, the sudden tremor in his hands, were clear to all. This was more than a business defeat. This was a personal apocalypse. Then, Elias's live voice, amplified through the same system, now steady and resonant, cut through the silence. "You built your empire on lies, Alexander. On forgetting your past, on destroying anyone who dared to stand in your way. But truth has a way of finding its light. I am Elias Thorne, and I am here for justice." A collective gasp rippled through the auditorium. The revelation hung heavy in the air, transforming the corporate summit into a personal drama of epic proportions. The faces of the audience members reflected a myriad of emotions: disbelief, shock, horror at Apex's deceit, and then a rising wave of awe and profound empathy for Elias. They understood now. This wasn't just about technology. It was about family, betrayal, and the relentless pursuit of truth. From skepticism, Their faces transitioned to dawning understanding, then to profound admiration, as they witnessed a silent, powerful form of poetic justice unfold before their eyes. The public vindication was absolute, confirming Elias's victory as a profound societal recognition of justice and the triumph of a long-suffering hero. Alexander, defeated and exposed, stood utterly shattered, facing not just corporate ruin, but the terrifying ghost of his own past, brought to life by the brother he thought he had lost forever. The silence that followed Elias's revelation was deafening, a vacuum created by the implosion of Alexander Sterling's meticulously crafted world. Alexander stood on stage, a statue of defeat, his face a mask of shattered disbelief and dawning horror. The digital reconstruction of the faded photograph, now complete, hung in the air, a spectral image of a past he had brutally suppressed. The audience, a moment ago a throng of industry professionals, was now a collective witness to a raw, deeply personal tragedy. Gasps, whispers, and the rapid clicks of cameras filled the void, capturing Alexander's public undoing. Agent Sterling, the same Agent Sterling who had been present at Alara Vance's unveiling, a silent observer in the complex web of interconnected operations, rose from his seat in the audience. He moved with purpose, his calm demeanor a stark contrast to the chaos unfolding on stage. He approached Alexander, his voice low but firm, cutting through the stunned silence. "Mr. Sterling, we need to have a word regarding the Project Chimera files and their contents." Alexander flinched, his eyes wide with terror, not just of legal repercussions, but of the absolute public loss of everything he had built. Within hours, the news spread like wildfire. Apex Solutions exposed, CEO's dark past and corporate espionage revealed by long-lost Sibling. The headlines screamed, sensational and damning. Apex's stock plummeted, investors initiated massive sell-offs, and critical partnerships dissolved overnight. The public outcry was immediate and furious. Alexander, though not facing immediate criminal charges for the smear campaign itself, was thoroughly ruined. His professional life, once a towering edifice of power, crumbled into dust. He resigned from Apex Solutions under immense pressure, a pariah in the industry he once dominated. His personal fortune, while vast, was now tainted, his name synonymous with deceit and familial betrayal. He was forced to confront the painful truth of his actions, not just their professional consequences, but the deep, personal wound he had inflicted on himself and his family. The empire built on lies had collapsed, leaving him in its ruins, haunted by the ghost of his forgotten past. Meanwhile, for Elias, the immediate aftermath was a whirlwind of interviews, apologies from formerly skeptical investors, and a flood of new opportunities. Ether Innovations, once on the brink of collapse, became an overnight sensation. The story of its founder's resilience, integrity, and unexpected familial revelation resonated deeply with the public. Major venture capital firms, previously wary, now vied for a stake in Ether. Talent flocked to them, drawn by Elias's vision and the company's newfound reputation for ethical innovation. The most significant new opportunity, however, wasn't financial. It emerged days later, after the dust had somewhat settled. Apex Solutions, now in disarray and facing a leadership vacuum, approached Elias. Not to acquire Ether, but to propose a radical restructuring. The board, desperate to salvage the company's reputation, offered Elias a position. Not as CEO of Apex, but as head of research and development for a newly formed, ethically driven division, focused on open-source solutions and sustainable technology. The proposal was revolutionary, a direct acknowledgement of Elias's principles, and a public attempt at corporate redemption. It meant combining Ether's innovative spirit with Apex's vast resources, transforming a former rival into a powerful ally for good. This wasn't just a new job. It was the chance to reshape a significant portion of the industry from within, to truly realize his vision for accessible, ethical technology on an unprecedented scale. It was an opportunity intertwined with the complicated, newfound familial bond with Alexander, suggesting a difficult but hopeful path towards healing and a shared future. Weeks later, the chaotic energy of the summit replaced by a quiet sense of purpose. Elias sat in his now larger, yet still minimalist office at Ether. Sarah Jenkins entered, a stack of project proposals in her hand, a genuine smile gracing her face. Crazy, isn't it? Sarah mused, gesturing vaguely towards the window, where the apex tower could be seen in the distance, now under new management and undergoing a significant rebranding. From being on the verge of ruin to this, leading the charge for ethical tech, with Apex's resources behind us. Elias leaned back in his chair, a rare, relaxed posture. It's more than that, Sarah. It's about truth. About what happens when you don't compromise your values, even when the world tells you to. He picked up the framed photograph, the reconstructed image of him and Alexander as children now perfectly clear. He always struggled, even as a kid, to forget, to be someone else. Sarah nodded, her gaze empathetic. You always knew there was more to it, didn't you? That your fight wasn't just about business. Some things run deeper than profit margins, Elias replied, his voice soft, almost reflective. The need for justice, the pull of family, even a broken one. He looked at the photograph, then at Sarah. He reached out. Alexander. He wants to meet. Just us. A flicker of surprise, then understanding crossed Sarah's face. That's brave, for both of you. It's a beginning, Elias said, a faint, tentative smile touching his lips. A different kind of beginning. The past can't be erased, but perhaps it can be rebuilt. Not with lies, but with truth. And maybe, just maybe, with a shared future. Their conversation was brief, yet deeply meaningful. It was a reflection on the tumultuous journey they had shared, the ironic twists of fate, and the profound lessons learned about truth, justice, and the enduring power of family, even when fractured by betrayal. Elias's personal growth was evident, transitioning from a solitary, driven founder to a leader capable of both corporate innovation and deeply personal reconciliation. The new calm was not just the absence of conflict, but the profound peace that comes from authentic living and the arduous yet rewarding journey of self-discovery and forgiveness. 1 year later, the sprawling campus of Ether Innovations hummed with a different kind of energy. No longer confined to a cramped office, Ether had expanded, its sleek, sustainable buildings nestled amidst sprawling green spaces. Elias Thorne, once a solitary figure driven by a quiet, almost desperate pursuit, now moved through the bustling labs and collaborative hubs with a sense of profound purpose and genuine peace. His vision for accessible, ethical technology had not just thrived, it had become a leading force in the industry, transforming the way companies approached innovation and inspiring a new generation of entrepreneurs. Ether's open-source energy solutions powered entire communities, their modular designs empowering individuals and reducing reliance on traditional, often exploitative, energy sources. Elias's commitment to transparency and ethical sourcing had become a benchmark, influencing competitors to reevaluate their own practices. He wasn't just a CEO, he was a standard bearer, his personal journey of fighting for justice now a guiding light for Ether's broader mission. The pain of his past had not vanished entirely, but it had softened, leaving behind a resilient strength and a deeper understanding of human nature. The relationship with Alexander, while still complex, was slowly, tentatively healing. Alexander, having faced the public and professional consequences of his actions, had embarked on a difficult path of self-reckoning. He had reached out to Elias, not for business, but for reconciliation. Their initial meetings were awkward, punctuated by long silences and the weight of unspoken resentments. Yet beneath the layers of past betrayal, a fragile thread of familial connection remained. Alexander, humbled and stripped of his arrogance, had started working with a nonprofit organization dedicated to corporate ethics, quietly using his vast knowledge of the industry to advocate for transparency and accountability. He was, in his own way, paying it forward, attempting to atone for the damage he had caused. Elias, in turn, had established the Catalyst Fund, a grant program specifically designed to support ethical startups and small businesses that had been unfairly targeted by larger corporations. He personally mentored young entrepreneurs from disadvantaged backgrounds, sharing not just his technical expertise, but also the invaluable lessons he learned about resilience, integrity, and the importance of never compromising one's values. He often spoke, anonymously, at business schools about the dangers of corporate hubris and the hidden costs of unethical practices, ensuring that his fight for justice continued beyond his own personal vindication. His story, though never fully disclosed, became an inspiring legend within these circles, a testament to the power of truth. One crisp autumn afternoon, Elias found himself on the sprawling rooftop garden of Ether's main building. The air was cool, carrying the faint scent of blossoming herbs. Beside him stood Alexander, their posture relaxed, yet a subtle distance remained, a silent acknowledgement of the work still ahead. They were overseeing a joint project, a massive solar-powered data center designed to be entirely open source, its energy surplus routed directly to underserved communities. It was a fusion of Ether's ethics and Apex's, now reformed and rebranded, vast resources, a symbol of their complicated but hopeful future. "The estimates are looking good," Alexander said, his voice softer, less strained than it once was. "It's more efficient than anything Apex ever built before, and it will be entirely transparent. No hidden agendas, no backdoors." A faint, almost imperceptible tremor ran through his voice as he spoke those last words, a ghost of his past shame. Elias nodded, looking out at the city skyline, the setting sun casting a warm golden glow. "It's a good start, Alexander. A real step forward." He paused, then looked at his brother. "It's about rebuilding, isn't it? Not just companies, but trust. And maybe, in time, family." Alexander met his gaze, a flicker of genuine regret and nascent hope in his eyes. He slowly reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, newly framed photograph. It was the same sepia-toned image of him and Elias as children, arms wrapped around each other, grinning widely. This time, however, the torn corner was gone, seamlessly restored, the little girl's face bright and clear. It was a fresh print, crisp and vibrant, a symbol of their rediscovered bond, no longer a faded relic of loss, but a clear image of a shared, complicated future. "I found the original," Alexander murmured, his voice thick with emotion. "It was in an old box. I kept it even when I tried to forget." He offered it to Elias. "I had it restored, for both of us." Elias took the frame, his fingers tracing the clear, youthful faces. The weight of it in his hands was not just that of a photograph, but of a long, arduous journey, of justice sought and found, of healing beginning. He looked at Alexander, a faint, genuine smile finally reaching his eyes. The rivalry, the betrayal, the lies, they were part of their story, but not the end. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting the skyline in hues of orange and purple, a silent, beautiful testament to the complex tapestry of life. This image, Elias and Alexander, standing together, overseeing a shared project, the repaired photograph, now a symbol of their enduring, albeit complicated bond, encapsulated the story's themes of healing, reconciliation, and the triumph of enduring justice. The second spring was not just a season. It was a profound, hopeful new beginning, a testament to the power of truth and the enduring possibility of redemption. If this story stirred your heart, if it reminds you that courage can alter destinies and that light always finds a path even in the deepest darkness, please leave a comment. Share this story with those who need inspiration. Like, subscribe, and hit the bell to never miss our upcoming stories.